I'm here at Aarhus University, where I'm going to speak to historian Richard Cole.
Richard Cole knows about the Viking period, which ran from about the year 750 to 1050. But he's also interested in modern conceptualizations of capitalism. Our modern capitalistic ways seem a far cry from the Viking period, but there are lots of comparisons made between the two. I want to find out why, and why business people like to appropriate what they perceive to be Viking characteristics.
Daughter of Holmger, the sister of Sigurður and Gautur, she had this bridge made and this monument erected in memory of Assur, her husband, the son of Earl Hákon, he who was on Viking watch with Gautur. May God help his soul now and forever. In that particular inscription, you've got this word Viking of a Viking watch, and that's actually almost like neighborhood watch against Vikings. That's not people going out there and doing Viking activity. It's people staying at home and worrying about Vikings. And a historian can get hold of that and start doing things like saying, oh, well, hang on a sec, it's women who are putting up the stones. So does that say something about the role of women in society? And it's a woman erecting a bridge. Was it up to local people to maintain infrastructure? And, oh, they call on God to bless them, so there must have been Christians around. So you can do that sort of historical work. But detailed texts where Vikings say, this is who I am and this is what I'm all about, those we don't have so many of.
So what about the sagas? Were they of any help?
Yes, all of the stuff that's written down in Old Norse, which is largely the sagas, some other texts too, from the 1200s onwards, almost entirely in Iceland, one or two in Norway, are used as sources for the Viking Age, or at least some sagas are. But it has to be remembered, they are written down at a time when people have not been Vikings for some 3 centuries. So there are big question marks over how to use those sources.
So it sounds like even historians don't know that much about the Viking period. Have you got some examples of where Vikings come up in everyday life now? I mean, they seem to be everywhere.
There is actually a project, it's called the World Tree Project. Go to worldtreeproject.org. It's run by Tom Burkett and Roderick Dale, where they try to collect examples of strange and unusual Viking branding. There's the Rover logo, that's got a Viking longship on it. There is the largest brand of underwear manufacturer is in India, who are called Viking. Here in Denmark, I have seen Viking brand rye bread. I have seen people saying Vikingaboller, Viking buns. Presumably the high fiber content is supposed to speak to the Viking heritage. You've got the Viking hats of the Danish football fans. Although for me, the absolutely most abstract and surreal one is dandryer.
So as you've mentioned, Vikings are used in all sorts of promotional ways, and not to mention the use of Vikings in popular culture, like the HBO series Vikings and the game Valhalla. But why this interest from the business community, do you think?
If you're a capitalist and you want to find yourself in the past, where do you go? Well, your past isn't actually that deep. Capitalism is probably only about 300 years old, give or take. So you've got to find someone you can latch onto in the past. And the Vikings are up for grabs, and people see part of themselves reflected in that historical phenomenon. It also allows you to imagine yourself doing something much more romantic than what you're actually doing. Even the most hard-working, dynamic entrepreneur is probably spending most of their time on Excel. So it's very exciting to be able to say, okay, maybe I'm spending most of my time on Excel and writing emails, but what I'm metaphorically doing is getting in my longship and going over there and doing some really manly stuff. I really think that is a part of the attraction of the Vikings in a business or in a capitalist context.
It's interesting that you should use the word manly, because a lot of the characteristics that are often associated with capitalism, like individualism, machismo, and so on, also are used for the Viking period. Do you think that is a fair comment to make?
You're absolutely right. This machismo is a thing you see whenever people from the business community or people from the more theoretical part of the capitalist world start talking about Vikings. And I think that a large amount of it can be explained because it's a way to identify with a more manly thing than the thing that you're actually doing.
With the Excel spreadsheets.
The Excel spreadsheets. I do think that's a part of it. There's another thing going on, perhaps, which is that the Viking Age has been commandeered by people long before capitalists got their hands on it. I mean, as soon as people start writing the history of the Viking Age, they are trying to integrate it into various nationalist or imperialist projects. That's been going on for centuries. So there's a lot of baggage that comes with the Viking Age.
So Richard, the billion-dollar question, were the Vikings capitalist? Would they be able to understand our capitalistic ways?
I do think that a Viking would appreciate the notion of pure self-interest. The part of capitalists that says, you know, that part of me that just wants to go out there and not be confined by any higher authority than myself, that is something that seems like it's going on in the behavior of the Vikings. Vikings constantly flee from the authority of kings. Anyone who's going to try and build a state over the top of them, they really don't want anything to do with that. The difference, of course, is that the Vikings actually go out there and do it. When the Vikings want to escape the grip of the state, they leave Norway and they go to Iceland and they set up a society where they do everything they can to avoid having a state. It's still a very cruel and exploitative society, but nonetheless. That's something that they might partially find themselves in. An interesting question is, if you've got a Viking in a time machine now, and we could set them up with a little business in town or something, how would that work out? And yes, I think there is something to be said for the idea that these were people who came up with projects to enrich themselves, and damned be anybody who gets in the way of that. You know, I'm gonna make that happen. Yeah, I think that's something that they would probably find agreeable. But the actual business of capitalism, the concept of extracting profit from other people, from having a team of workers who you pay a certain amount to, and that you have to make sure that the wages you're paying them are less than what you get back on the product, and using that capital to reinvest in further projects, the thing that absolutely make you a capitalist, I think that would have been very puzzling to a Viking. A Viking would have operated in a world where getting someone to work for you was done through some sort of status relationship, some sort of idea of mutual obligation. You know, you are a lesser man to me, but we've engaged in some sort of gift-giving ceremony that says that if you ever get into some sort of conflict, I'll be the one who has your back, or I will arbitrate. In return, you'll come out with me and go on Viking raids and that sort of thing. That's something that doesn't translate terribly well into a payslip.
But isn't it good that people want a more nuanced picture of the Viking period, not just stamping them as large, white, bearded males who rape and pillage?
In a way, the texts that are coming out of the business community do reflect an actual debate that has been going on inside the walls of the university as well about the Viking Age. There is a sort of pendulum that swings from what a nasty, horrible lot the Vikings were, you wouldn't want them living anywhere near you, to actually, you know, the Vikings were cultured, lived in nice, clean wooden houses. So that debate's happening inside the university as well.